Hello and welcome back to ABC News Digital's discussion of Marvel's Civil War II comic arc. My guests today are Marvel's Axel Alonso, ABC News is Michael Rothman, and remotely we've got the writer of this whole shindig, Brian Michael Bendis. So, folks, issue 8 is out. It's been months in the coming. How does this one break down, Brian?
Well, it's a big finale. I mean, it really comes to a close. I think one of the brilliant moves of the first Civil War was that there was a winner and a loser. Most of the time, historically, throughout the decades, when there's a hero versus hero story, somewhere in the story they stop fighting, or there's no real winner. But we, as a group, had decided early on that the only way this really works is if there's a clear-cut winner and loser, even though there might be some bittersweet feelings about that on both sides or even to the players. And so for Civil War II, we knew there would be a quote-unquote winner and loser. And surprisingly, even through all of the meetings and conversations and drafts, the ending was still the ending we had always planned.
I know throughout this issue there was I really enjoyed, there was a creeping realization among everybody involved saying we need to start stopping this. It came through the Inhumans, it came through everyone there. Everyone, of course, except the two combatants, Iron Man and Captain Marvel. So this kind of increasing fear, increasing worry, it really kind of pervaded the issue until, again, we get to this final confrontation, this huge issue, that, again, knocks Iron Man out of commission. This is really kind of resetting the board for a lot of what's kind of to come. And so throughout this whole debate, throughout this whole intellectual discussion, throughout this whole bare-knuckle fistfight, why was this the determined outcome?
Well, it just seemed that Carol Danvers and the way she has fought as a military person, and it just that she would win the fight. That Tony, probably because of the stuff that happened in the first act, was never going to be at the top of his game. He's emotionally destroyed. He's a wreck. He knows he's right, and things just kept slipping out of his fingers. So, any prize fight you've ever seen, I mean, we saw one this weekend. One player is ready to win the war, and one player wants to, but just doesn't have it when it's time.
Axel, this whole arc we've been introduced both in this book and across the rest of the Marvel Universe with this character Ulysses. And I know early on when you first came on the show, we were talking about how central he was to both the Marvel Universe at this point, throughout this whole event. And so how does his conclusion kind of put a coda on his experience throughout the whole universe so far?
Well, honestly, not to pass the buck, I really think it's more a question for Brian. Brian is really linked to Ulysses. Brian, why don't you take that one?
Sure. Yeah. No. This is something this is probably the thing we had the most discussions about, because just having a character in a story that basically is the MacGuffin that everyone's fighting, that either this character has to go away at the end, die at the end, become an Avenger at the end. Something has to happen with this character, and obviously, if they're willing to fight each other to the death over him, you can't just join the Avengers or the X-Men, humans. He had to go away. And at one point early on, we talked about just him realizing that maybe he has to kill himself to stop the fight, but that seemed like a super bummer. And what was the more hopeful idea, and the hopeful idea for us was that he evolved past what the Inhumans know that they can evolve to, that he evolves to almost a galactic character. And so now he's one of the elders of the cosmos, which is a thing that Marvel has. And let's see where he lands next time. But he's off the board as far as Earth is concerned. But he's not off the board as far as Marvel is concerned, or the galactic books are concerned.
So when do we get the odd couple roommate situation with Franklin Richards going on? How's that? When do we get that?
Any day now.
I pitched that. That has been. I think that is the future of the company.
So, kind of zooming out on this arc in general, now that we've kind of come to a conclusion, now that we've kind of see where everybody ends up, we've seen a lot of folks have very interesting journeys. Again, we kind of just talked about Ulysses a little bit, but you have again Miles, who's one of the younger, more central characters. How does this kind of shake down when it comes to like who had the worst experience in Civil War, who grew the most? Where do you think some of the more interesting character notes over the course of this were?
Well, fans of Tony Stark had the worst experience,
Without a doubt.
but no, it's listen, you know what we like about a story like this is, you know, the event itself is exciting, but my favorite stuff and most of the stuff we get the most response of is the emotional stuff, the character journey, the learning something, and most of the young characters. You know, we have this really a team really, of brand new young characters like Miles Morales and Kamala Khan and Amadeus Cho, and they all experienced the first giant event, and they also experienced heroes that they looked up to, fighting for what they believe in. But it's one thing to fight a bad guy for something you believe in, but to fight someone you admire over something you know is true, that you know you're right about, is a different thing. And you know, when I see people arguing online about who's right, Carol or Tony, it really comes down to they're both right, but they're both fighting for something they believe in against something they believe in. And that's a tough, difficult decision. And to watch young heroes see that up close and have to walk away and decide what that, you know, that one day they may have to do the same thing. Or Miles looking at a vision of himself that reflects the thing he's most worried about, which is that he could go criminal like his uncle did. He worries about the dark thoughts in his head. He also, you know, Tony Stark off the board, many characters like Williams and Miles who had a connection to him lose that connection, and they have to learn to stand.
And I read this 3 times in 2 days. I'm still kind of taking it in and still kind of marinating with the content because it is such a game changer. The whole series has been, and you know, Brian mentioned it. You know, these are comics. These evolve. People come and people go. What do you say to a lifelong Tony Stark fan or a lifelong Bruce Banner fan, or even Captain Marvel to a degree, because her whole identity has changed now because of what happened here. As far as I know, we're going to get to coming forward, you know, later on, but how, I almost want to say, like a Dr. Phil said, how do you console someone like that?
Well, you start is by telling them that the story's never over. It's never over. And that these characters are incredibly flexible. You can bend them, you can somewhat break them, and they always bounce back. They stood the test of time for decades for a reason. But by the same token, you have to challenge, you have to take them to new places, or they become static. Mm-hmm. That is your responsibility.
Exactly. You know, the one critique that I love to discuss the most is Captain Marvel fans worried or concerned that she was acting out of character, that she was too hard-lined in her opinion. But that is her character. She doesn't stop the fight. She doesn't back down from what she knows is true. She's a warrior, and that's one thing to have her go, you know, from fight to fight with the Great Gargoyle or Doctor Who. But it's another thing to be challenged against people who are your peers and equals, and yet to know you're right. This is challenging the character, and her win, though physical, is not a mental win. She doesn't feel great about it. She's not high-fiving everybody. It was horrible, you know?
I know we actually have some panels from this issue. Again, some really great character notes for Carol in this issue. She meets the president. That there's kind of a breakdown of what happened in this event and just kind of an overarching look. You can get back to what we're going for, Brian.
No, I was just gonna say that it's interesting because people would write me a letter saying, "Oh my God, you're going to ruin Captain Marvel just like you ruined Iron Man in the first Civil War," and I'm like, no one got ruined in the first Civil War. Everyone's fine. You know, if anything, they're 50 times more interesting. Because you know what they'll do when pushed against the wall, and that's kind of what we want to do now. Now, Axel will tell you, one of the first conversations we had about this story and was that we predicted the future of reaction, that we knew exactly who would react and how they would react, and so it thematically it fits in part two, which is about future visions. We had a vision that the reaction
Yeah.
would be mixed because these two heroes both have giant fan bases, just like Captain America and Iron Man did first. And no matter what happens, half those readers are going to be either widely entertained because they saw the character pushed farther than they ever hoped, or they're going to be bummed out because the character's, done.
We,
Oh, sorry.
please.
No, you go ahead.
Just to elaborate, we wanted the Marvel Universe, we wanted an event that was structured around a tough issue, a complex issue, a challenging issue that would force readers to take sides. And in
Yes.
Carol and in Tony, we found two characters of incredible resolve and intellect who would find root in one of those positions. And I think Carol is so much more interesting now because, as Brian says, she stuck with it. She has a military background. She showed the resolve and the determination to see this through. Most importantly, to make the tough decisions. She made a grown-up decision. You know, it's for her to wrestle with her own conscience when the story's over. You understand? But that's what we do as adults. And I think that's one of the interesting things and part of the legacy of this Civil War II event is its impact on the young characters. Is they've watched the adults now and they have to ask themselves, is this what we want to be? And that's not to cast a pall over the adults. It's them understanding that adults have to make adult decisions. And what is my path? And that's what you're seeing in the Champions book and any number of other books we're launching after.
And adding on to that, that's actually, I'm glad that you spoke first. Piggybacking on what everybody else said, you mentioned earlier that the consensus in this book in the middle was that we have to stop this. And that's what really resonated with me. Right or wrong, and I can't help but feel like it's obviously a microcosm of society today, was that right or wrong, whatever side you're on, is the escalation is the problem, becomes the problem at some point. It becomes meta and becomes this thing this is the problem. I don't know what this is, what this thing is, and it's not the sides. We need to work together to figure it out and calm it down. And that really just like stuck with me looking over and over again, and it kind of, connects to everything that everyone said here, and it just, I don't know if that was
Yeah,
No,
it's,
Brian?
go ahead, Axel.
No, there's a real world metaphor at the core of what we're doing here. At what point does profiling become wrong? Is there a point to which it becomes wrong? Do the ends justify the means? That was certainly one of the things among many other issues we were touching upon in this story.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, when Axel and I had our first conversations about the story, we thought this would resonate to the world that we're living in, but I think we can all say we're surprised how much.
Yeah.
We did not think we would be this divided as a country. That people would dive as deep down into the mud to fight their fight as both sides have, and it was nice to reflect that in work and reflect that through heroic acts.
I am very actually interested in. You've been able to write a story at a very interesting time, regardless of nothing in particular, but just the past several months, whether you're talking about the profiling issues, whether you're talking about the involvement of youth in large, like adult, so to speak, issues, like whether all these kind of notes that came up through the book, I'm interested in how did this impact your writing process? Did this impact how you were viewing? I know that these are very well planned ahead of time, but what kind of, did the real world bleed into the work at all, or was it always going to? Is that the intention when these kind of things are so directly tied to what's going on out there, so to speak?
Well, it's funny because there's two pieces of my work that are floating around the internet a lot this last couple months. One is the time 10 years ago where Luke Cage picked up Donald Trump's limo and shook him out of it because he'd done something that Luke didn't like. Now, that was 10 years ago. And also, we did a storyline years ago where Norman Osborn took over the Avengers, kind of bullied his way in and took over the Avengers. And both people are, and every time those things are brought up, people are like, looking at me like I'm Nostradamus, like I predicted things in my work. So I would say that yes, the real world affected the work, but I won't be able to tell you how, like for another couple of years. Like I what happens is I'm affected by everything. I'm affected by my kids, I'm affected by my friends, I'm affected by the world. And then it's all honest and writing, and then a year or two later I can look back at it and go, oh, but that was bothering me. Glad I had an outlet.
So you're not trying to write a
So
book for
that's-
2016. You're trying to write a book about characters, and you just happen to write it in 2016, and the legacy of that is what it kind of goes to be.
Well, yeah, and also, having done a couple these events, and Civil War number one being like the best-selling comic of Marvel's modern history, that this book's going to be on the shelf for a while, so try to make it as timeless as possible, wherever you can. And so, yeah.
While we're in the making of segment, so to speak, Axel, Brian, anything that you want to kind of talk into what went into making the series, what went into kind of designing these characters, kind of moving forward?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that was interesting was initially this was supposed to be a 7-issue storyline, and we were supposed to talk a month ago. But looking at the ending and looking at the power of the imagery, I asked Marvel for another issue because I knew that showing Ulysses' visions, showing what happens to him, showing the fight between Carol and Tony could really be bombastic and powerful, but I would need more pages. And they were gracious enough not only to give me the extra issue, but to hire all these amazing artists to illustrate brand new illustrations of all these future visions of the Marvel Universe. Some of which have already come true, some of which may never come true, some of which are coming true before you know it. And that was pretty exciting for me, and it was a different process. But sometimes you get to the end and you realize you need like 10 more minutes of film, and this is the comic book version of that.
Going into something like this, I mean, it is art, and it is there's such a history and legacy in comics and these characters, and I just love to know, like, getting into your brain for 2 seconds and your brain too. Again, everything has to evolve and change. This, I guess, could be a two-parter. One, out of this series, is there one shift or change, Banner, Stark, Captain Marvel, even Hawkeye, that you're most excited about? And then also, how giddy do you get, and also how terrified do you get when you start and you're like, okay, we're gonna probably like knock out Iron Man out of commission and basically reimagine it with Riri or something like that? Because I just love to know what that's like.
Well, those are two things, and the one Axel's going to laugh at because Axel was, we were at a Marvel retreat where the story was being worked out, and the Banner Hawkeye beat of it, which is pretty, big stuff. That's a big deal, and there were a few permutations that we were discussing about how it worked out, and then me and Axel went to the hallway and kind of came up with exactly what you saw in the book. I went back into the room, which is filled with all the writers and editors of Marvel Comics, and I pitched Hawkeye kills Banner and how he kills Banner and why he kills Banner. And the room of the most jaded writers in the world went, ooh, like they gasped. And they're not an easy room. And we both looked at each other and knew it was going to be over. Because if you could make Jason Aaron go, what? So that was number one. That was when you felt like something good was going to happen. But I also knew I was going to have to unplug from the internet that week. Number two, what was your second part of the question?
It was kind of like what shift in this series are you most either proud of or excited about as far as moving forward to the future, I guess, because we have.
Oh, and it was about Riri Williams as well. And it's funny because Riri wasn't initially created to replace Tony. That she was created with the simple idea of that Tony needs more supporting cast. That there needs to be more people in Tony's life than Pepper and Happy. And she was created to challenge him, to get him off his butt. Intellectually and morally.
We actually got some of this next issue coming out of Riri's next coming arc, I believe. Some previews right here. So we just got those up. Again, we see Riri getting into the armor and all this kind of, big change coming up.
Yeah, I was very excited. Riri got promoted in a big way because of this event. And I thought that was an exciting pivot moment. And also, I think I was excited by the discussion and where we landed on Hawkeye too. Yes. Hawkeye, like Carol, made a very difficult decision rooted in some complex backstory, a promise made to Bruce among other things. But he took out Bruce Banner. And he was put on trial for it. And he was acquitted. And we felt that that was emotionally true. And we think it spoke to decades of Hulk stories. It spoke to the day, you know. I believe that Hawkeye would have been acquitted. And I think that was a moment where I don't think that the room felt that initially, but in discussion we realized that this is where we thought the verdict would land.
And on screen we have that moment, again, huge moment from early in the arc, where again you have these two characters who have known each other for decades at this point, right? Just kind of coming to the moment that they have been leading up to for years. Again, you don't have a Jekyll and Hyde story without Jekyll and Hyde biting in at the end, and and this has been, and to kind of get to your point, looking forward, what I thought was very interesting about this arc and what's happening next, right? So in order for Amadeus Cho to take over as the Totally Awesome Hulk, you need to have Banner die. In order for Kate Bishop to have her own book, and the book titled Hawkeye, you need to have Hawkeye go off and do, again, what's going on in Occupy Avengers, which we can come into that later. In order to have Riri, you need to have Tony bite it briefly. So what goes through your head when you're kind of planning this out, and how much of this is like, let's look at the legacy of these characters, let's kind of distill what's interesting about them, let's move forward with it. The urge to kind of change, where does that come from?
Well, I think you have to be prepared for people to be angry, for starters, but also, you know, we got into this business, into this profession for a reason. We love these characters as much if not more than you, and their stories are never over, as you know. So, you know, we're very excited about the road ahead. We've not lost sight of these characters. We have a long-term plan in place. It's this last year's been a dark year. We've broken a lot of things. We're very aware that Civil War II is a very dark event, a very heavy event. It speaks to the zeitgeist of the day. It tears people apart. It kills a couple of key characters. And we're aware that a lot of new characters stepped onto the front of the stage. I think that this upcoming year is going to be a year that's going to surprise a lot of people, where you're going to see there's a lot of room on that playing field for characters that you know and love.
And you mentioned legacy, and I always think of, I'm a sports guy, so I was with the sports, and no one wants to see a Derek Jeter or a Jordan play past their time. You want to kind of encapsulate and see that character, that person, in your mind's eye as the great character they were. I mean, who was happy when Superman was killed and then brought back? I mean, you kind of want to have these moments and keep them the way they are, and not overstay their welcome, I guess.
Well, here's what we've learned in the past. There's two things here. Number one is that every shocking moment that we're discussing, whether it be Hawkeye and Hulk or Carol and Tony, a shocking moment, anyone can do a shocking moment. Yeah. Anyone can. But it's what we do afterwards. It's the follow through that decides the real quality of the story. I mean, it's the difference between like a shared universe and just writing a book. With a shared universe, people want to see, you know, they literally, whether they think it or not, it's a year from now, they let you know if they like what you think. Because it's the follow up. Oh, the Hulk is dead, so now She-Hulk is interesting, and Amadeus Cho has a new thing going on, and Hawkeye has a new thing going on, and Tony has a new thing going on, and Riri has to step it up fast, and Miles has to step it up, and Carol has a whole new agenda. So these major pieces of the Marvel Universe all have very clear, very exciting agendas that they didn't have before. So we're very excited about that. So it's going to take a few months for people to unpack it and see what they get. And you know, I went through this with years ago. I did a book called House of M, and when the shocking ends of that book happened, they were screaming at me. And then a year later, when they see that the changes are stuck, that they seem much happier. Like it wasn't for shock value, it was for story value. And we know every single choice we made in Civil War II abides by that rule. It's about the story that's coming next. And so we'll see where things land in 6 months.
Now, while we're looking forward, I know there was this great 2-page spread in the book that kind of looked around at different, potential futures. Not all of them may happen. Some of them are happening. You mentioned earlier. let's kind of go into a few of them. I distinctly remember there were some street level characters that have become very interesting and well known to folks from some sort of Netflix thing. We've got some iconic characters from.
I'm unaware. What?
We've got Riri that's already come. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy. We've
Yeah.
got this young group of heroes that we've seen pop up in one another's books consistently. We've just got. Could you kind of what?
Yeah, well, I can
catches
speak
your eye
to a
here?
couple least. I can speak to a couple least. I mean, that's a glimpse of the future, the ripple effects of the event, and what they mean for Marvel Publishing, for the Marvel Universe in 2017. I mean, you see the image of Daredevil, Power Man, Iron Fist, and all the rest. I mean, obviously, we have some big stories planned. We have a story, Daredevil is prospering right now. We're launching Kingpin, Bullseye, and Elektra series, as well as 2 Iron Fist series this year. And don't be surprised if all those characters' fates intersect at some point in a major way. You know, you've seen the new She-Hulk book. She had a horrible experience in Civil War II, if you recall, right out the gate. Well, you know, she's going to carry those scars into her new book, which we just launched. In one of the visions, you see a bunch of monsters running at one another across a 2-page spread. I don't know if you've got that handy, but that's Monsters Unleashed, a big epic story we're telling right now, January through March, that will have the entire Marvel Universe, Avengers, X-Men, Spider-Man, Deadpool, everyone all in to save an endless avalanche of monsters that are coming into down to Earth to destroy it.
Ultron too. We saw Ultron. I might
Yes,
be mistaken. I don't know.
Well,
I'm
I did
guessing.
see some notorious metal individual taking up Iron Man's suit. Let's take it up for infamous Iron Man. What's that about? What's Victor Von Doom doing here?
Brian?
Well, this is a book we're very, very proud of. This Victor Von Doom has taken it upon himself to don the Iron Man armor and do his version of Iron Man in what is got to be the biggest villain trying to dig himself out of the biggest hole in the history of literature that's ever been attempted. He is obviously one of the biggest monsters in the Marvel universe. He's done horrible things to many, many people. And he has woken up and decided to turn it around. And can he turn it around? He just discovered why he wants to turn it around. The issue that just came out, the response was as good as anything I've ever had my name on. And I'm so happy people are interested in Victor trying to redeem himself. I thought that was a dicey premise for some, even though I was so sad to hate it. But boy, people are really into it. I'm really happy about it.
Yeah, Von Doom's always been this fascinating figure, again, looming over in so many ways, kind of serving a ton of different purposes within the world, whether going tete-a-tete against the Fantastic Four, or whether Squirgle, or again, his motivations have always been fascinating, and a lot of them were justified in the event from, it's 2017 now, wow, from 2 years ago, where again, the world was unmade and remade, and he played a very central role in that. So how does this kind of affect his future within the Marvel Universe? Does he have a new purpose, so to speak?
Well, yeah, no, he's in the new issue of Infamous Iron Man. He confesses that the events of Secret War, where he became God, where he finally, after years of study and trial and error, got the power that he needed to turn the world into what he wanted, and he got it. He climbed the mountaintop, but when he got there, he realized it was not what he wanted. And some people can relate on different levels, that you get a certain place and you go, oh my God, I want this. And you get to go, I don't want this. And that's what he's dealing with. And it's his midlife crisis. And and people are fascinated by it, because some people read it and go, so being a monster wasn't fulfilling enough, so you're going to try this? You know, go to hell. And other people are like, listen, anyone's trying to redeem themselves, we gotta let them try. And also, Victor may be the hero we need. You know, we might need an Iron Man with magic powers and a vague morality. Just because he wants to be a good guy doesn't mean he's wired to be a good guy, and it doesn't mean he's going to do good guy things the way good guys do. So we're going to see what he does and how he does it. It's been a lot of fun. You can't tell you, man. It's so much fun.
I mean, this isn't a question. I more of a statement, but I love these kinds of storylines because no one's really necessarily completely bad or completely good. I mean, my favorite part of Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet years ago was when Thanos kind of flipped the script in Infinity War and helped, save the world from, Magus and all those other characters. I think I love seeing the backstory of characters, the way they go, the forks in the roads they go, and so this is more of a statement. I love this idea and I love this concept. I mean, this is like, I guess.
Well, yeah. Doom and Magneto, particularly, are two of the villains in the Marvel Universe who have been so well written over the decades, so consistently well written, that we can understand where they're coming from, and we know what they want and why they want it, and it's not just mustache twirling. Doom's story. If you read Ed Brubaker's Book of Doom, his character is so evolved and so complex, and this idea of a villain trying to redeem themselves, trying to climb out of that hole that they've created, has been something I've wanted to do forever, and I've done little versions of. But for Doctor Doom to try it, that's about as big a mountain as Marvel has to climb. So I'm very excited.
It's Darth Vader throwing throwing Sidious
Dr.
off
Doom makes Darth Vader look like Wreck-It Ralph.
If you
Let's
like
be real
that kind
here.
of story, you want to keep your eye on Wilson Fisk in 2017, without a doubt.
I know we do also have a set of panels from the upcoming Jessica Jones. So we've got, again, no dialogue here. Axel, could you help us out?
No, this is Brian's baby.
Oh, I don't
Talk about it. I'm not going to get between him and Jessica Jones.
Well, actually, this ties very well into Civil War II, because whether or not you read Civil War II, there was a business where Carol, using one of Ulysses' visions, interrogates a woman who seems to have no criminal past or criminal doings, but was told she was a criminal. In Jessica's new storyline, we meet this woman again and find out that the events of Civil War II turned her against the superhero community, and she's doing massive damage to it, and only Jessica can stop it. And that's very exciting. And at the same time, the case that Jessica's working involves somebody from the Ultimate Universe finding themselves trapped here and being driven insane by not living in their own universe anymore. So we have some interesting dilemmas brought on by two Marvel events, and some of it's a little meta, and some of it's just right on.
But Brian, did the events of Civil War II turn her, or was Ulysses right and she was always inclined to go that route?
We're gonna find out.
There you go.
Exactly. Well done, Axel.
There you go.
That's how you tease an issue.
The infinite loop of what the chicken or the egg.
Well, just before we kind of come to a close here, looking forward, we talked about a whole bunch of different books moving forward. Again, you've got a lot of different dichotomies coming up. You mentioned it's been a dark year in the world of Marvel. For a lot of these characters, they've been through some of the hardest experiences that they had in a while. And coming out of it, you've got, again, on one hand, you've got Doctor Doom. On the other hand, you've got Riri Williams. On one hand, you've got a Hawkeye that had to make a ton of sacrifices and is roaming the country, and then a younger incarnation who's going to California and setting up shop and trying to make her own way. You kind of see a lot of opportunities for characters to take different tonal directions, take different experiments moving forward. Where should we kind of keep an eye on? Where does this kind of come from? Is this deliberate, looking at these two different ways to tell similar stories? Axel?
Look, we always have a long-term plan. We meet as a group to talk through things, and we take the aerial view of everything we're doing, everything we've planned, and the sum total of all of those events. We're well aware that we have a female Thor, that we have two Captain Americas, one who's African American, one who's evil. That Iron Man now is a teenage African American girl, and we're aware Hulk is Korean American. We're aware of all of these things. We're aware of the fact that a number of our perennial characters, like Logan, are dead. We're aware, and we have a plan, and that's part of the fun. Is where we're headed in 2017 is going to surprise you, shock you, and I would have no doubt anger a lot of people as well, because we're not doing our job if we don't do that. But I think when you take a look at what Civil War II managed to do, is it repositioned a number of characters moving into the future, most of all Carol Danvers. who now enjoys a much more prominent place in the Marvel Universe. It brought us Riri Williams, who graduated to be the new Iron Man. We have a new She-Hulk. We have a repositioned Hawkeye. 2 Hawkeyes. Kate Bishop is now, she's taken up residence in Venice Beach in one of my favorite books we're publishing this year. So there have been lots of pleasant surprises coming out the other side. You were talking about how much you enjoy Occupy Avengers, the home of the other Hawkeye book. But also, I would say, I'm very excited about the street level characters that both Brian and I have a deep love for. We have not one, but two Iron Fist books coming out next year. We have a prospering Daredevil book. Exactly, one for each fist. We have a Kingpin, Bullseye, and Elektra series coming out. Who knows what more will be coming into that world? What I can say is you will want to keep your eye on the street in 2017 because those stories are going to become more and more important and more fascinating.
And Axel will tell you, I just a couple days ago after the winter break, I sent an email to Axel and Tom and others, just going over all of the things I want to do and all of the choices in front of us. And the thing that I'm most excited about, starting at the street level, is bringing some genuine hope to the Marvel Universe. That with the young characters, through all the dark drama of Civil War II, there was all these young characters with the wide eyes of hope in their heart. And, even seeing Rogue One and, seeing that hope being the theme of the piece, it reminded me that that's what I want to write about. I want to write about people having hope for the future and people fighting to give other people that hope. And I think you're going to see a lot of that in the books. It's going to be a lot of fighting, a lot of drama, a lot of stuff. But in the end, I want to talk about what hope means in the modern day.
And I think we need that right now.
Yeah.
I genuinely think we do. I think that's what people are going to be turning to their entertainment. They're going to be looking. I was listening to some comedians talk about how if you're in a comedy club and you even bring up anything political, people go, I'm sick of it, and how interesting that is. Like 2 months ago, that's all anyone want to talk about, and now people just want to talk about anything else. And I think we're the anything else, and I want to write about a hopeful world that we want to live in. That's really what Marvel and all great universes do, is they create a universe that you like to live in. Even if there's aliens attacking, you still want to live here. And I think that's going to be doing, starting at the street level books, all the way up to the Galactic.
That's the beauty of Marvel, and that's the beauty of like how unique and special the universe is with Marvel. It is connected to the world, and it is very similar to the world, and it's the ebbs and flows of life. And I think I'm looking forward to 2017 and what's to come. But at the same time, you wouldn't appreciate it as much if you didn't have these dark times that have happened this year in the books. With
Absolutely.
Banner and Hulk. I think it's so interconnected and woven, and it's kind of genius and brilliant in a way.
All right.
Well, it's the most interesting thing about the Marvel Universe versus other fictional universes is that it's really New York. It's really our world.
Yeah.
It's as close as you can get and still have a guy who gets bit by a spider and gets spider powers. It's still our world. And, it's not fake cities, it's New York. And with that comes, not to quote, a responsibility to make sure it reflects correctly, or people can smell, they smell it when it's fake. They want their real stuff.
And with that hopeful look forward, we are coming to the close of our 8th and final edition covering Civil War II. Just in the interest of full disclosure, ABC News and Marvel Entertainment are both owned by the Walt Disney Company. Thank you very much.
That's a reaction.
I want to thank very much all you guys for coming. Again, this is the many of times for you, and again, I know the second time for Brian and Axel over here. Thank you very much to the viewers, whether you're watching on the Marvel Facebook page, whether you're watching on ABC News Digital. There's plenty of more video content to come on both, so keep a close eye on each. I want to thank, again, all the viewers who've stuck with us through the rest of the way. You can go back in time and check out some of our other shows. We've got some really great topics covering, again, the X-Men comics, Margaret Stoll's upcoming Captain Marvel, a whole bunch of series of different books. Thank you for everyone who stuck with us. Axel, Michael, Brian, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's all for us. Thank you.